Milton Davis here. Thank you for coming to my reading. Today is September 30th, which is the last day of September and the last day of Steamfunk month. Um, Glad you guys are able to make it. Tonight I'm going to be doing something a little different. Tonight I'm going to be actually reading excerpts from a upcoming novel, a work in progress called "The Curious Cases of Mary Perrywinkle" or Martha Perrywinkle. I'm sorry, I don't even know the name of my own novel. The Martha Perrywinkle stories take place in Freedonia. If you're familiar with From Here to Timbuktu and La Rosa de Matanzas, these stories take place in Fredonia as well. Um, those two books, in addition to the story that's in the Steamfunk anthology, are action adventure stories that focus more on the action and the characters, and not so much of some of the other aspects of Fredonia. With the Curious Cases, we get a little bit more in depth into what's going on with Martha and everyone else. Um, um, I'm looking at my comments and I'm not seeing anything, but that's because of the fact I think I'm actually doing something within the event as well. So unless you're commenting in the event, I may not see it. So um, Martha's an interesting person. She is a educator from Atlanta in Fredonia, and she has decided to set up a girls' school in the city of New York for in order to educate young Negro girls and hopefully give them opportunities for advancement. This is a story that I've been carrying around for a while, and finally decided to sit down and get it going. I know some of you have seen the cover art and was very excited about it. So what I'm going to be reading tonight is excerpts from the story itself, different things going on. It's the way I usually write stories is I don't do outlines. The way stories come to me, they come to me as scenes, and as I put those scenes together until I get to a point where I actually have a coherent story and I start to write. This first part that I'm going to read you will give you a really good idea, a really good sense of Martha, who she is, why she's doing what she's doing, and a little bit of background into her world as well as Freedonia. So this is the first excerpt I'm reading. It's actually the first few pages of the book of The Curious Cases of Martha Perrywinkle. Here we go. Martha Perrywinkle wiped her brow as she paced among her baggage. The summer sun was relentless as always, defeating her white parasol. At least she wouldn't miss the heat. She would rather be inside resting comfortably with the air chiller on full blast, but she couldn't afford to miss the movers. Although summers in New York could get hot, they would never match the oppressive combination of high temperature and humidity that dominated the South during the summer solstice. She was about to retire to her empty home when she heard the heavy chug of the moving truck. The huge vehicle rumbled down Peachtree Street, spewing steam from its stovepipe exhaust. The driver maneuvered between the steam cars and horse-drawn wagons, pulling to the curb with precise efficiency. An escort sat beside him, its head following the man as he climbed from the truck cab, then sauntered to Martha, a clipboard clenched under his left arm. "Miss Perrywinkle," he said, his high-pitched voice a surprise coming from such a bulky man. "Yes," Martha replied. "You're late." "Sorry, ma'am," the man said. "Bernard Martin Moving Metal Men at your service. Atlanta traffic can be quite a challenge." "Indeed," Martha replied. "Luckily, I prepared for such a situation, so we have plenty of time to get me to the skyport." Bernard pushed back his derby. "I have room for your baggage, ma'am, but I don't have room for you." "I'm aware of that," Martha replied. "A friend is taking me to the skyport." Bernard nodded as he took the clipboard from under his arm. He inspected Martha's baggage, checking the list as he walked. "Everything seems to be in order," he said. "Can I get your signature?" Martha extended her gloved hand and Bernard passed her the clipboard. "Kind of warm to be wearing those, don't you think?" Martha glared at Bernard from under her glasses, and the mover raised his hand in surrender. "None of my business," he said. She handed him the clipboard. You have half the payment, she said. You'll have the rest when I confirm my baggage has arrived safely. It probably will, Bernard said. Martha's eyes narrowed. Probably. Moving metal men are the best movers in Atlanta. Probably the best in Freedonia, Bernard said. I can't vouch for our American sister company. You better pray that they are just as good, she replied. Otherwise, you won't receive the remainder of your payment. Bernard frowned as he signaled the escort. The automaton climbed from the truck cab, then lifted the first trunk with ease. It never ceased to amaze Martha how strong they were. It carried the trunk to the rear of the truck where Bernard waited. The man opened the gate and the escort loaded the trunk. Martha was focused on the process when a sharp horn broke her trance. Stanley Johnson sat in his steam roaster, fashionably dressed in his linen sack suit and straw hat, a wide smile on his sepia face. He exited the car, then opened the passenger door for Martha. Thank you so much, Stan, Martha said. No problem at all, Stan replied. Only the best for my best lady. No sooner did she settle in, did Stanley pull from the curb into traffic. So you're going ahead with it, he said. Yes, I am, Martha replied. I wish I could talk you out of it. My mind is made. It has been for years. Our people in America need help, and I can help them. Why does it have to be you? Stanley asked. Why not? Martha replied. If you stay, I would... You would what, Stan? Martha asked. Please don't say anything you don't want to say, and I don't want to hear. You know I care about you, don't you? Stanley confessed. And I care about you, Martha replied. But I no more wish to marry you than you wish to ask me. So that's settled. It's just that I worry about you, Stanley said. Don't, Martha replied. All the arrangements have been made. I'll have 13 students and a wonderful brownstone as a school. I'll gain more students once the other families get a chance to see what I'm capable of. I'm told the people are anxious for their children to learn and can live in Freedonia. It will be nice to teach young people grateful for the opportunity. I'm sure it is, but you must be careful, Stanley said. Relations aren't good between our countries. You know I don't care about politics, Martha said. You should, Stanley replied. They may look like us, but they're still Americans. Be careful, Martha. That's all I ask. I will, Martha said. Promise me, Stanley said. Martha sighed. I promise. Now, can you make this thing go any faster? I have an airship to catch. Stanley frowned. Hang on. He pushed the throttle and the steam car picked up speed. Martha smiled. She enjoyed moving fast, whether it was riding a steam car, riding a horse, or building her career. In her short 32 years of life, she'd accomplished all there was to do in the educational field, earning her PhD in education and reaching the level of one of the top professors at Atlanta University. There were rumors of her being considered for dean, but the current dean, Professor Xavier Turnipseed, was relatively young in leadership years, and Martha was not the patient type. It was then the ideal of going to America and opening a girls' academy blossomed in her fertile mind. Once conceived, there was no turning back. She traveled throughout the country several times looking for the perfect spot and found it in New York City. As they neared the skyport, Martha noticed a commotion that brought a frown to her comely face. A few yards closer revealed what she suspected. She punched Stanley as hard as she could on his shoulder. Ow! Stanley rubbed his shoulder with his free hand. Why'd you do that? If you weren't driving, I'd have punched you across the jaw. I told you not to tell anyone. Stanley cut his eyes at Martha as he continued to rub his shoulder. There's no way I was going to let one of Atlanta's best and brightest leave without a proper farewell. Martha was about to respond with an unpleasant retort until she recognized two people standing in the front of the crowd. Her anger melted away. You told my parents? How did you get them to come? I told them that you were about to do something stupid, and they were the only people that could talk you out of it. That, and I paid for their train ride. Martha's anger returned, and she punched Stanley again. Stanley scowled. Punch me one more time, and I'm wrecking this car. Martha grinned. It's only because I want to see my parents that I won't. The small crowd cheered as Stanley pulled to the curb. Martha smiled and waded into the collection of colleagues, former students, and friends. She worked her way through them, then quickly went to her parents, hugging both tight. Both were immaculately dressed, Daddy in his three-piece suit, and Mama in a white dress and teal trim and a matching teal hat. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I missed you so much." "Apparently not that much," her father said. "You were going to fly off to America without visiting us?" Martha kissed her father's cheek, and a smile broke his sour countenance. Daniel Perrywinkle carried a gruff exterior, but everyone who knew him well was privileged by his gentle soul, especially his children. "Yes, Daddy," Martha replied. "I knew you were going to try to stop me." "Damn right I would," he said. "That's why I'm here." Martha turned from her father and hugged her mother. Carlotta Pearson Perrywinkle was the opposite of her husband, genteel on the outside but hard as iron inside. It was she that Martha most resembled, in manner as well as looks. "Mama, what do you think?" she whispered. "You're going to do what you're going to do," Mama replied. "You always have. You're my daughter." "She gets that from you," her father complained. "Yes, she does," her mother replied. "We raised her well." Martha turned back to her father, then kissed his cheek again. He fought back a smile. "You're going to go no matter what I say, aren't you?" It's too late not to," Martha said. "Everything's been arranged. Once I get settled, I'll send for you both to visit." Her father grunted. "Ain't no way I'm going to that place. They ain't got no respect for Negroes up there." "You could come and teach them like you did in the war." "The war changed us. It didn't change them." Martha felt a tap on her shoulder and turned to see Stanley pointing to his watch. "Sorry to interrupt, but your flight is leaving soon," he said. Martha grabbed her parents' hands. Walk with me to the departure, will you?" Her mother squeezed her hand, then pulled her close. "Of course we will." They strolled off as the others waved their goodbyes. Mama and Daddy accompanied her to the waiting area. They found 3 seats together and sat. The skyport bustled about them, Freedonians rushing to their flights that would take them to the far corners of the world. It was an exciting time for the young nation, but also a challenging time. The other countries of the world were taking notice, and that was not necessarily a good thing. Freedonia's relationship with the various West African kingdoms and its alliance with New Haiti caused complication for European countries trying to expand their influence in Africa and South America. There were rumors that they were behind a tense relationship with America, but Martha and every Freedonian knew that outside interference wasn't needed to stir that pot. "I have something for you," her mother said. She reached into her bag and took out a leather-bound Bible. "Thank you, Mama," she said. "Now I have 2. "Not like this one," Mama said. "It belonged to your great-grandmother." Martha cradled the tome against her chest as tears came to her eyes. Mama Bessie's Bible was a family treasure. Her mother trusting it to her was a serious matter. "Mama Bessie clung to the Lord during hard times," Mama said. "I suspect your time in America may be difficult as well." "Not nearly as difficult as hers," Martha replied. "Everything I do will be because of her sacrifice." "Indeed," Daddy said. "You make sure you remember everything we taught you. Everything. Some things that book won't protect you from." Martha made a fist. Her father did the same, and they touched them together. "Last call for the New York flight," the scheduler called out. Martha stood and gave her parents one last hug before boarding. "I'll miss you both so much," she said. "Write us as soon as you get settled," Mama replied. "I will." Martha gave her parents one last wave goodbye before joining the passenger line for her flight. They strolled through the boarding gate, their tickets checked and stamped by a man and woman smartly dressed in their navy blue skyport uniforms. From the gate, they followed their flight attendants to their airship, climbing the stairs into the cabin. Martha had requested a window seat and was happy that one was available. Her seating companion, an elderly white woman with a welcoming grin, stood to let her by. "A nice day for traveling," the woman said. "Yes, indeed," Martha replied. No sooner did Martha settle in her seat did the woman extend her hand. Martha took it, and they shook. "Evelyn Braithwaite," the woman introduced herself. "Martha Perrywinkle," Martha replied. "So what takes you to America, Martha?" "I'm starting a school in New York City," Martha replied. "Really?" That's interesting, Evelyn said. Why so? Martha asked. I wouldn't think Americans, especially New Yorkers, would take to a Negro woman teaching them. It's a school for Negro girls, Martha said. The woman's expression relaxed. Oh, I see. American Negroes could learn a thing or two from you Freedonians. You're so industrious. Martha smiled, but inside she cringed. This was going to be a long trip. Martha quickly took Mama Bessie's Bible from her bag and pretended to read. So I guess you'll be teaching the girls domestic skills, the woman said. Martha looked up from her book. No, she replied. I'm teaching literature, math, history, and the sciences. The woman laughed. Whatever would a Negro girl do with such knowledge? Martha's mood became sour. Where do you hail from, Miss Evelyn? I'm an American, she said. I live in Ohio, but my family originally lived in Alabama territory before Freedonia before the revolt. That explained the attitude. So the reason for your visit to Freedonia? The woman's expression became harsh. To visit the land that was stolen from my people. Martha lost her decorum, rolling her eyes. Your family has a right to their land like everyone else, she said. All they had to do was become Freedonian citizens and pledge to honor its laws of the nation. That will never happen, the woman growled. There's only one way to get our land back. You tried, and you lost, Martha said. The woman was about to say something else, but Martha pulled the attendant cord. A flight attendant arrived immediately, a handsome brown man with engaging eyes. Is there a problem, ma'am? He asked. I'd like to change seats, Martha said. This one is unacceptable. Martha cut her eyes at the American, and the flight attendant nodded. I think we have a few empty seats closer to the captain's cabin, the attendant said. Please gather your things and follow me. Martha placed her Bible back into her bag, then exited the seat. Have a good flight, she said to Evelyn. She couldn't abandon her manners, even when the person she spoke to didn't deserve respect. Evelyn grunted, then looked away. The attendant led Martha to the empty seat. I apologize, he said. We try our best not to see the Americans and Freedonians together. For the most part, there are no incidents, but one can never be overly cautious. I understand, Martha said. She settled into her new seat just before the airship took flight. It took her a few moments to shake off the conversation with the woman, but soon she settled into her Bible and her tension eased away. She was taking a chance setting up a school in America's most notorious city, but she truly felt this was where her skills were needed the most. She took off her gloves and ran her hands over the worn leather book. If Mama Bessie could survive a revolution, so could she. She put on her gloves, turned to the New Testaments, and began to read. So that is the intro to Martha Perrywinkle, The Curious Cases of Martha Perrywinkle. I also have some other sections here to introduce some other characters. One of the other main characters of the story is a gentleman by the name of Cyrus Pendergrass. Cyrus is a New Yorker, a New York native, and becomes an important person in Martha's life over a period of time. So this is a section that kind of introduces Cyrus and gives you an idea about him and who and what he does. Cyrus Pendergrass looked at his pocket watch, then up into the clear sky. The cargo was late, which was not good. In 30 minutes, the border patrol would arrive, and he hated abandoning good cargo. It wouldn't be the first time, but that didn't make the situation any easier. He had bills to pay, and his collectors were much less amenable than the bank. He turned to Archibald Sims. The red-haired, freckle-faced Canadian was withering in the unusually hot summer heat. He wiped his forehead, then cursed. This is not what you promised, Cyrus said to Archibald. His men took cue, shifting their rifles. You know how these things are, Archibald replied. We're smugglers, for Christ's sake. You can't expect everything to go right. Yes, I can, Cyrus replied. Just give it a few more minutes, Archibald said. If it doesn't show, I'll give you your money back. Every penny. Boss, Big Tim interrupted. Cyrus strode over to Big Tim. The tall, heavy-set Jamaican studied the horizon through a pair of Freedonian binoculars. Cyrus only invested in the best equipment for his crew, and Freedonian gear was unsurpassed. It's coming, Big Tom said. He handed Cyrus the binoculars. So it is, he replied. He handed the binoculars back to Tim. Well, it looks like you'll live to see another day, Archibald. The Canadian swallowed hard. You were going to kill me? No, I wasn't, Cyrus replied. They were. He nodded toward Big Tim and the others. Archibald gulped. It took the small airship another 10 minutes to reach them. No sooner did it touch ground did Cyrus's boys swarm it, unloading the contraband whiskey and loading the stolen mechanical parts. The whiskey was put into the waiting trucks. Archibald gave Cyrus a relieved smile before shaking his hand. Pleasure doing business with you, he said. I welcome future opportunities. I'll never do business with you again, Cyrus replied. Enjoy the rest of your life. But Cyrus climbed in the lead truck. Let's get out of here before the Federals arrive, he said. Big Tim started the steam truck and the contraband caravan sped off. Cyrus reached into the back of the truck and took a bottle of whiskey from one of the crates. He opened the bottle and took a swig. A satisfied smile graced his boyish face. I swear Canadians make the best whiskey. He passed the bottle to Big Tim, who wiped the spout before taking a long swig. It's good, he said, but it ain't nothing like a good Montego Bay rum. Cyrus rolled his eyes. Everything's better in Jamaica. You got it, Tim replied. Yet here you are in America, working for me. Not because I prefer it, Tim said. Cyrus took the bottle and set it aside. He didn't want his driver drunk, just in case they had to outrun the Federals. Hey, boss, you hear the news? Tim asked. What news? There's a new school opening near 5 Points. Cyrus sucked his teeth. Not another Catholic trying to save the hopeless. No, sir. A Negro woman is opening it. A Freedonian. Cyrus's eyes widened. Really? Interesting. Very interesting. It's been a while since I've done business in 5 Points. How do you know she'll want to do business with you? She will, one way or another. You know how persuasive I can be. Big Tim laughed. Yes, I do. But you might want to stay away from this one. Why? Cyrus asked. The highbrows are excited about her, looking forward to her teaching their daughters and getting some of that Freedonian education. So, Persephone Taylor is involved. Cyrus's mouth twisted into a frown. That could be problematic. Tim laughed. That woman has a hold on you. She's a dangerous person, Cyrus said. Best leave her be. But I'm still curious about this Freedonian woman. You wouldn't happen to have her name, would you? No, Tim said. But I have a feeling you will soon. Speed this thing up, Cyrus said. I don't want to be late for dinner. Yes, sir. The truck lurched as Tim accelerated. Cyrus's mind drifted from the business at hand to thoughts of the new school and its Freedonian mistress. So that's a little introduction of Cyrus. It's not as you might think it is. Cyrus is mostly a legitimate businessman, but circumstances in New York City sometimes forces him to do things that he doesn't prefer. But that's how it is. Now, if you noticed in the story, I mentioned another character, a character by the name of Persephone Taylor. Persephone is another person that will become an interesting character in the story. And so I'm going to flip a little ahead and read a little bit about Persephone, if I can find it. Give me a moment here. Here it is. This actually takes place after Martha has set up her business and her school. Martha sat at her desk, drumming her fingers. She glanced at her chronometer and frowned. Almost noon and no visitors. She knew the day would be slow despite her advertising, but this was worrisome. Surely the Negro community of New York could see the benefit of a school focused on educating their daughters. Doubt began to creep in her mind with every minute passed. Maybe this was a bad idea. She should have chosen another country, maybe New Haiti, Bahia, or even Dahomey, some nation familiar with Freedonia, not a country that was only a conflict away from being an enemy. It was then that the ringing of the entrance bell saved her. Martha stood, pressing the wrinkles out of her dress and fixing her mouth into a welcoming smile. The clack of heels against hardwood became louder as a white hat appeared over the steps. The woman wearing the broad hat emerged like an umber angel, covered in an elegant dress matching her hat. She inspected the room as she walked toward Martha, not once meeting her eyes until she stood directly across from her. Their eyes met, and the woman unleashed a smile as bright and warm as her wardrobe. She extended her gloved hand. "Persephone Stannis," she said with a light, lilting voice. Martha took her hand and shook it. "Martha Perrywinkle, thank you for taking the time to visit us today. Please, have a seat." Martha and Persephone sat. Persephone took another look around the room. "Well, you've done an excellent job with this old building. I'm impressed." "Thank you," Martha replied. "Must have cost a pretty penny." "It did, but any amount of money is worth spending to educate our girls, don't you think?" "Yes, I do," Persephone replied. "There are quite a few schools in New York that cater to the needs of Negro girls. What makes yours so special?" "I'm aware of the Negro girls' schools in the city," Martha said. "They do well in teaching them the skills needed to be a good wife and homemaker. The Freedonia School for Negro girls takes a different approach." Persephone's eyebrows rose. "Really?" Martha nodded. "Yes, I teach Negro girls math, the sciences, literature, and the arts. I prepare the girls for life beyond marriage and child rearing." "How Freedonian of you," Persephone replied. The women laughed and the tension between them abated. "Have you ever been to Freedonia, Miss Stannis?" Martha asked. "Yes, many times. And call me Persephone. And you can call me Martha. Tell me, did you travel with your husband?" Persephone rolled her eyes. "I would have to have one to do that, and I'm not inclined to make that a reality anytime soon. My entrepreneurial endeavors take the bulk of my time, and men are as needy as babies. Who has time for that?" Persephone tilted her head and her eyes narrowed. "What about you, Martha? Did your husband finance this venture?" "No," Martha replied. "This is my dream. I will sink or swim on my own volition." Persephone lit the room again with her smile. "I suspect we will become best of friends." She stood, and Martha stood as well. "As you probably suspect, I have no children," Persephone said. "However, I represent a number of concerned Negro women interested in your establishment. I was sent to gather information and deliver a report. I can tell you that my report will be favorable. You will be much busier tomorrow." Martha came around the desk and hugged Persephone. "Oh my," Persephone said. "A bit of Freedonian hospitality." "Thank you so much," Martha said. "Don't mention it." Persephone reached into her purse and gave Martha her card. "Telegraph me when you're free. We'll have dinner." "I will." The sound of footfalls drew her attention to the stairs. A dark brown-skinned man in a finely tailored suit appeared. He looked at the women and grinned. "Now that's trouble," Persephone whispered. "Take my advice and get rid of him as quickly as possible." Persephone walked away as the man sauntered toward Martha. He tipped his hat as they passed. "Persephone, Cyrus." So that's a little introduction of Persephone. And now, the name of this book is The Curious Cases of Martha Perrywinkle. And all I've basically been reading about is Martha and her school. As I mentioned, at some point, Martha becomes involved with the policemen of New York City because she helps them solve a case. The policeman that she works with the most is a man by the name of, let me find his name here, O'Hannigan. O'Hannigan is an Irish cop, and the Irish and Negroes in New York also have a little tension between them, to say the least. And Cyrus and the policeman, Mr. O'Hannigan, don't like each other that much as well. So this is actually a story, part of the story where Cyrus and Mr. O'Hannigan, Sergeant O'Hannigan, have a run-in. So let me read that to you. Cyrus brushed the snow off his shoulders as he entered Lou's tavern. He scanned the crowd before proceeding to his table in the far corner near the large roaring fireplace. Lou kept the table empty just for him, happy to accept the coins Cyrus paid him to do so. He hung his coat and hat on the rack, then eased into the seat. After a deep, relaxing breath, he took a cigar from his coat pocket, then lit it. The smooth aroma eased his mind, and a smile came to his face. It was a good night. His collections went smoothly, and his other projects were showing signs of bearing fruit. The day passed so quickly that he had time to drop by Martha's school for a chat. His grin grew as he thought of the Freedonian schoolmarm. He'd met intelligent women before, but none as ambitious and brave. Their conversations were always lively and invigorating, a pleasant deviation from most interactions he dealt with daily. His musing was interrupted by Haley, the waitress. She placed a plate full of boiled potatoes and a rare steak, then handed him a mug of warm beer. "You're an angel, Haley," he said. "So you say," she replied. "Anything else? Do you have a warm apple pie in the back?" "Of course we do." "Bring me a slice when I'm done, will you?" Haley winked, then strolled away. Cyrus was cutting into his steak when a commotion at the door drew his attention. His pleasant mood crashed when he recognized the cause of the disturbance. Sergeant O'Hannigan. The sergeant looked about until he saw Cyrus, then made his way to his table. The gruff Irishman stopped at the table, looking down at Cyrus with disdain. "Sergeant O'Hannigan," he said as pleasantly as he could muster, "what brings you to my fine establishment?" O'Hannigan pulled up a chair, then sat. "What business do you have with Miss Perrywinkle?" he asked. "I don't think that's any of your concern, Sergeant," Cyrus replied. "The hell it isn't," O'Hannigan snapped. "Miss Perrywinkle is an important person to the department. Seeing her in your company is a situation we are not happy with." Cyrus placed the steak in his mouth and talked as he chewed. "The department doesn't give a damn about Martha," he said. "You just don't want anyone harming your meal ticket." O'Hannigan opened his mouth, but Cyrus pointed a steak knife at him. "She's solving your cases for you," he said. "Did she tell you that?" "She didn't have to," Cyrus replied. "One moment you're an average Irish bully in a uniform patrolling 5 points. Then all of a sudden you're solving cases left and right and bucking for detective. I'm sure your bosses know, but they don't give a damn, as long as they're solved." O'Hannigan rose to his feet, then took his billy club from his belt. "I better not see you there again," he said. "That's Martha's decision, not yours," Cyrus replied. "And you need to pay more attention to your surroundings." Cyrus nodded, his eyes focused beyond Hannigan. The copper turned to see 6 burly men standing between him and the door, their intent clear. "Have a nice night, Sergeant," Cyrus said. "Stop by the bar and get you a drink on me. It's cold out." Cyrus stared into his teacup. And that's that section right there. So I'm going to start to read you something else. So we're kind of jumping around tonight. But yeah, that was kind of an introduction to showing the relationship between Cyrus and Sergeant O'Hannigan. Again, like I said, this is a story that's a work in progress. I'm looking to be done with the novel probably by the end of this year, and hopefully we'll be rolling it out in December. It's actually going to be the beginning of a new series. Martha working with Sergeant O'Hannigan, Cyrus, and another interesting friend of hers that helps her on her cases when she's by herself, that I will leave for later on. And I think it'll be a combination of serious and exciting adventures and a lot of other things going on. And I'll really get to talk a lot about the relationship between Freedonia and America during this story, and give people more insight to the alternate history world created of Freedonia. Thank you guys for coming and listening tonight. Don't forget, this is the last day of the Steamfunk month, and all my Steamfunk titles are on sale. From here to Timbuktu, La Rosa de Matanzas, and of course Steamfunk. I also have 3 books on sale that are only available as ebooks: Masquerade, Rite of Passage, Dorothy's Story, and The Long Walk. So check those out at my website. They're also available at Amazon and anywhere books are sold, but the sale prices are only available at my site. So you guys take care. You have a good evening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.